Agradeço a presença do Robert Kolasky e é um grande prazer recebê-lo dentro do nosso stage do Cybersecurity Summit 2021. Robert Kolasky, mais uma vez, muito obrigado e é com você.
Hi, this is Bob Kolasky. I am an assistant director at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and I lead an organization called the National Risk Management Center. The National Risk Management Center has the responsibility of driving national efforts to reduce strategic risks to America's critical infrastructure, with a particular focus on risks that come from cyber incidents as well as digitalization. And a lot of our focus is to anticipate what the future is going to look like and set the conditions for a more secure future. Today, I'm here to talk about our particular work in helping the United States implement our national strategy on fifth generation telecommunications networks and creating a secure and resilient 5G network. I'm very excited to be here and look forward to the discussion. So first, let me start by thanking Raphael for having us here, and let me express my appreciation to the organizers for the Cybersecurity Summit Brazil for inviting me back to speak on the importance of network security and the emerging technology of fifth generation telecommunications networks. Today, we have a global population of 7.8 billion people. 5.2 billion of them are mobile users, 4.7 billion are internet users, 4.3 billion are active on social media. There are now over 21 billion devices connected to the internet, a number expected to increase to some 50 billion in the next 2 years. So it's clear that our world is becoming increasingly digitized. The volume, variety, and velocity of data is growing exponentially. And while this digital revolution has brought incredible good to countries around the world, connecting humans around the globe, we have to acknowledge that as the world gains more platforms, data points, and devices, there are also increasingly more points of failure and a growing surface for threats. In specific, let me talk about the emergence of 5G telecommunications networks. We must be able to confront actors that threaten the confidentiality, integrity, availability of our data, our privacy, and our identity. 5G networks will be the single biggest critical infrastructure build that the globe has seen in the last 25 years. And coupled with the growth of cloud computing, automation, and artificial intelligence, 5G will demand focused attention today in order to secure our tomorrow. What's really at stake here is the digital sovereignty of the allied world. The question becomes, will we have integrity of the data that will underpin all aspects of our life for the next generation? To ensure that we do, we must all work together for this common goal. My organization is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA for short. We are the lead civilian cybersecurity agency in the United States with a broad cybersecurity and critical infrastructure security and resilience mission. We bring industry, research, academia, and government together to understand risks to the nation. We are building on a long-term mission to work with owners and operators of critical infrastructure, particularly the private sector in the United States, as well as state and local governments to protect our nation against attacks from all malicious actors, but increasingly from our cyber adversaries. Within CISA, I run the National Risk Management Center. And at the NRMC, we are focused on reducing cyber and other systemic risks to national and economic security. Through our collaborative approach, we are able to identify, analyze, prioritize, and manage the most strategic risks to our nation. One of our most notable efforts is the identification of national critical functions. These are the functions of government and the private sector that are so vital to the United States that their disruption or destruction would have a debilitating effect on security, national economic security, and national public health or safety. By understanding what is truly critical, where key dependencies and interdependencies lie, and the potential cascading impact of threats, we can identify pockets of risk we deem to be unacceptable for the nation's critical infrastructure. One example is our country's reliance on telecommunications infrastructure. As part of that infrastructure, it includes more than the consumer's use of computer systems, rather multiple critical infrastructure systems depending on information transmission through telecommunication systems. These modern critical infrastructures that rely on telecommunications include electric power grids, banking and finance systems, natural gas, oil, and water systems, and rail and shipping channels, each of which depend on computerized control systems. System interdependencies amongst these critical infrastructures greatly increase the risk that failure in one system will cause failures or disruptions in multiple critical infrastructure systems. Therefore, a disruption in telecommunications networks can have a devastating effect on all aspects of society, causing shortages and stoppages that ripple throughout the country and the world. But let me shift to 5G. The emergence of 5G technology will empower a vast array of new and enhanced capabilities across the critical infrastructure sectors and related national critical functions. However, these developments will also introduce significant risks, from insider threats to cyber espionage, that threaten national security, economic security, and impact other nations and global interests. Therefore, the stakes for securing our networks could not be higher. The United States is urging countries to adopt a risk-based security framework for the construction of all elements of 5G networks. We urge nations to conduct a careful evaluation of potential hardware and software equipment vendors and their supply chains. Evaluation criteria should consider the extent to which vendors are subject to control by a foreign government, and whether governments have meaningful checks and balances on its power to compel cooperation of said vendors with its intelligence and security agencies. We urge nations to consider whether vendors could be ordered to undermine network security, to steal personal information, conduct espionage, disrupt critical services, or conduct cyber attacks, and don't do business with those vendors. Countries and citizens need to be able to trust that 5G equipment and software will not introduce risks that threaten national security, privacy, or human rights of citizens. Trust cannot exist where information and communication technology and service providers are subject to an authoritarian government which lacks an independent judiciary and rule of law to protect companies and consumers. The United States is deeply concerned about the dangers of installing networks with equipment that can be manipulated, disrupted, or controlled by untrusted vendors that do not include rights or privacy laws or restrictions. Further, companies that have a history of unethical, unlawful, and otherwise inappropriate behavior, including intellectual property theft, cannot be trusted. Each country must make its own decision about its national and economic security. Likewise, the United States must and will protect its own information and networks. Should a country allow untrustworthy, high-risk suppliers and vendors into its 5G networks, that will present a risk to its ability to have trust in those networks. Implementing trusted components encourages competition and the continued development of secure 5G technology services and products. CISA and our federal partners recently released a joint 5G threat report that highlight the importance of using trusted components. The report identified 3 primary threats: policy and standards, supply chains, and 5G systems architecture, all of which describe the use of untrusted components as a potential threat vector. From a policy and standards perspective, let's talk about that. As adversarial nations contribute to the development of technical standards, the potential exists for standards to include untrusted technologies and equipment that are unique to their systems. These proprietary technologies and equipment may limit competition and force customers to adopt untrusted new technologies. The lack of interoperability with these untrusted proprietary technologies limits the ability of trusted companies to compete in the 5G market. The custom technologies that do not meet interoperability standards may be difficult to update, repair, and replace, or they could be entirely invisible to the customer. As for supply chain, with the potential for the connection of billions of 5G devices, there's increased risk for untrusted or counterfeit components to be introduced within the 5G supply chain. This could include compromised devices or infrastructure that ultimately affect end-user equipment such as computers, phones, and other devices. 5G networks will use more ICT components than previous generations of wireless networks, and the insertion of untrusted components could provide malicious actors with additional vectors to intercept, manipulate, disrupt, and destroy critical data. Multi-access edge computing transforms the way data is processed and stored by moving some core network functions closer to the end user at the network edge, rather than relying on a central location that may be hundreds of miles away. The introduction of untrusted 5G components into the multi-access edge computing could expose core network elements to risks introduced by software and hardware vulnerabilities, counterfeit components, and component flaws caused by poor manufacturing processes or maintenance procedures. We encourage governments, telecom operators, and network users to prioritize security when building out their 5G network. National measures must be crafted to fully exclude untrustworthy and high-risk suppliers, regardless of national origin, from providing equipment and software in 5G networks. The risk of allowing high-risk suppliers' equipment anywhere in 5G networks cannot be sufficiently mitigated. U.S. allies, including the United Kingdom, have come to the same conclusion. Allowing untrusted vendors to participate in it or control any part of a 5G network creates unacceptable risks to national security, critical infrastructure, privacy, and human rights. We will continue to work with our allies and partners to support a vibrant and diverse supply chain of trustworthy telecommunications equipment and services. This includes support for open, interoperable approaches like open radio access networks, RAN technologies, that promise to increase vendor diversity and market competition and have the potential to lower costs and improve security. We encourage other countries to join us in our support of trustworthy vendor diversity, open networks, and transparent standards. Let me shift and take a moment to talk about partnerships and how we can work together to address some of the challenges and risks associated with 5G. In February of this year, CISA released its first ever international strategy, known as CISA Global. If you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to visit our website at cisa.gov/global for more information on the launch of our global initiative. That's cisa.gov/global. Our CISA Global strategy outlines how CISA will work with international partners to strengthen the security of our global cyber ecosystem, increase the resiliency of critical infrastructure, and address urgent threats and manage risks that are critical to U.S. cybersecurity and critical infrastructure interests. The strategy also emphasizes CISA's international vision and commits our agency to 4 goals. One is to advance operational cooperation with international partners. The second is to build international partner capacity. The third is to strengthen collaboration with international partners through stakeholder engagement and outreach. And the fourth is to help shape the global policy ecosystem toward one that has a bias toward more security and more data protection and more protection of fundamental rights. Operational cooperation, that's really about increasing our situational awareness to be able to better assess and counter evolving risks. We want to work with international partners to advance our collective abilities to maintain continuous situational awareness of physical and cyber incidents and emergency communications issues. This work contributes to a collaborative global environment where we and our partners learn from each other to better understand emerging risks and effective defenses. As part of this, we want to identify concerns and threats that may impact U.S. critical infrastructure in order to facilitate an expedited response and mitigate negative consequences of any incidents that happen. So let me close by saying that I think building international partner capacity is probably one of the most important things that we can do globally as part of our CISA strategy. CISA wants to continue to help increase the capabilities and awareness of international partners in the cyber and critical infrastructure realms. Part of building capacity is strengthening collaboration. It's about building relationships. We want to continue to strengthen collaboration with foreign counterparts to enable a common understanding of threats and hazards through information sharing and increased preparedness for the shared responsibility of protecting vital infrastructure and information systems. And finally, we want to help shape a global policy environment that supports security priorities and enables future requirements. We want to develop international norms and best practices that strengthen cybersecurity, fortify critical infrastructure resilience, improve communications, and enhance resiliency while mitigating risks. The United States, and indeed the world, is safest with an open, interoperable, reliable, and secure information infrastructure. CISA is committed to doing our part to make this a reality. We want to ensure that network defenders and risk managers can work together to prevent and mitigate risks to critical infrastructure. Candidly, the more cybersecurity other countries are, the safer the United States will be. So we're doing this in a spirit of partnership, but also because this is in our national interest to work with countries like Brazil to help you secure your networks. We want to work together to prevent malicious actors from having any attack surface to penetrate. This means helping to shore up vulnerabilities globally. Our goal in the United States is to quit being reactive to products that pose real or potential threats and become more proactive by stopping those potentially harmful, overtly vulnerable products from being deployed in the first place. To support these efforts, CISA is dedicated to helping the United States set international standards for cybersecurity in a manner that ensures supply chains for digital products are secure and that manufacturers and software developers fix vulnerabilities in their products quickly to reduce the risk of compromise. I know other countries are also looking at how to manage risks to their supply chain, including the risk posed by 5G technology. I'm eager to learn more on how other countries are approaching these issues. We also recognize that we need to deepen our ties when responding to cyber incidents. According to the recent World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report, cyber risks continue to rank among the top of global risks. While the COVID-19 pandemic may have accelerated technological adoption, it also exposed a vast number of cyber vulnerabilities. As this global risk intensifies, so must our collective response. Looking at the months ahead, it is critical that we continue to elevate cybersecurity as a strategic global issue and develop greater partnerships between our countries. Just like any other strategic societal challenge, cybersecurity and the rise of emerging technology like 5G cannot be addressed in silos. I'm confident that by working together, we can develop a common strategy to protect and defend our global cyber ecosystem. Everyone has a role to play in the collective defense of our critical infrastructure. We ask that you continue to join us, engage with us, and share with us as we collectively meet these challenges head on. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to this audience. It's great to be back here at this. It's great to be back here at the Cyber Summit and look forward to any questions that you may have. So thank you.